Oh, hi. Okay. Just wait for some more people to join. Right. Hope everyone's having a nice evening. Right, let's kick off. So, hi everyone. I'm Carla, I'm from Snooze Tots, and I'm a sleep consultant. So my job is to help lots of mums and dads solve their children's sleep issues. And I get their babies into good routines, and I get them sleeping well day and at night. So we've got tons to get through in the next hour. So I want you to walk away feeling like you have a better understanding of how your baby sleeps. So I'm not going to do a big science lesson all evening, but I do think it's important for you how to understand why things are happening. Because if you have an understanding of why things are happening, you're more likely to fix it. So I also want you to feel better equipped to deal with all those common sleep issues that often arise. So things that we're going to cover tonight, we're going to talk about basics of baby sleep, and the importance of learning independent sleep, talking about babies' wake times and wake windows, and getting the right amount of sleep in the day so that they get the right amount of sleep at night, sleep props, early rising, night weaning, night transitions. There's tons to get through. And a lot of you have sent through some questions through Parentchum. So at the end, I'm going to do a little Q&A. So I'm going to try and answer as many of your questions as possible. If I don't have a chance to answer any of them, just send me a message on Instagram, snooze_tots, and I can help you. Or just send me an email, carla@snoozetots.com, so I can give you a hand. So let's kick off. So I'm sure you've heard a load of people say, my baby sleeps through the night. So did you know that this is actually impossible? So none of us, adults, babies, we're just not designed to sleep through the night. We all wake up multiple times. So it's how human sleep cycles work. So I'm going to explain how these cycles work, because once you understand how they work, it's going to give you a better understanding of why your baby could be waking frequently. And it's also about like the importance of independent sleep. So let's look first at our own sleep. You'll understand this, just bear with me. So when we go to sleep, we go from a light sleep to a deep sleep, back into a light sleep. And we then transition to the next cycle, and it's a real non-event. And we do this, each cycle is 90 minutes, and we do this repeat cycle about 6 to 8 times a night. So with babies, it's the exact same. They go to sleep. So whether you put them down to sleep with a bottle, patting, whatever you do to get them to sleep when they go to sleep at night, this light sleep happens, and they go into the deeper sleep, and then they re-emerge at the light sleep. If you put them to sleep using a method, whether it's feeding or whatever method you've used as a sleep prop, they're going to get to that end of that cycle, and they're going to need you to get them back to sleep again. So they're going to wake up and they're going to cry. So their sleep cycles only last 50 minutes. So why am I telling you this? So it's just the importance of independent sleep is so important, so your baby can transition seamlessly between each cycle, and it's going to stop them waking up. It's an essential life skill to learn to sleep. So their bodies will just seamlessly move from cycle to cycle. And so the main part of my job is to teach babies how to learn this skill of independent sleep. So we do this through sleep training. I'm trained in a lot of different methods because I don't really believe there's one approach that's appropriate for every baby. Depends on their temperament, their age, also depends on the parent's belief. So you can use a gentle method, you can use a more method where you go in and do check-ins, but they've all got something in common. The goal is to teach your child to sleep independently. and this stops all those middle of the night wakings as well. So once we've got our baby sleeping independently, we need to look at things like sleep prop. So sleep prop is anything that assists your baby going to sleep. So that prevents them from learning to sleep independently. So this can include rocking, it can include dummies, it can include feeding, it can include patting, whatever it is. If it stops your baby sleeping independently, it's obviously going to cause a sleep issue. So you might need to eliminate it. So dummies are a funny one, because dummies on one hand can actually be a good thing if your baby is able to put it back in their mouth. Usually from about 5 months on, they can learn to insert it themselves. And it can actually be a good thing in terms of it reduces SIDS, it soothes them when they've got teething issues. But if your baby is younger than 5 months and they're waking up and you're that dummy butler running back in and out and in and out, then it's going to cause sleep problems, and it might actually be better to get rid of it. It really depends on each situation whether you get rid of the dummy, but if you are going to get rid of the dummy, it's not as big a deal as you think it is. Once you've got rid of it, they just learn, it just helps them to learn to sleep independently. So we've got our baby sleeping independently. Now we need to make sure that they've got a good nighttime routine. So I can't stress enough the importance of a routine at night. So babies thrive on routines. So it's their cue that if you do the same thing over and over again every night, at the same time every night, they're more likely to go down easily. So a good bedtime is between 7 and 8:30. I personally like to get my child down between 7 and 8 for a more better bedtime, but it depends on your routine at home, whether your husband's coming in at night, and also depends on when they last had their nap, last nap of the day. We'll get onto that in a minute. But the only other exception between bedtime is if they're going through a nap transition. Because if they're going through a nap transition, you're going to want to get them down earlier, around 6:30, because they'll be very tired. We'll talk about nap transitions in a bit as well. So to get a good nighttime routine, there's a few things that I suggest that you do. So first of all, I always suggest that you feed your baby outside of the nursery before the bedtime routine, before bath. Now you might ask, why do I suggest you do this? So I suggest you do this so that you're disassociating feeding with sleep. So you give your baby your bottle downstairs in the lounge, in a quiet room. It just completely disassociates their little brains of feeding and sleep. You want to make sure that their bedtime is no longer than 20 to 25 minutes. So this can include bath, getting dressed, brushing their teeth, reading a book, singing a lullaby, whatever you do. But just make it about 20 to 25 minutes long, because you don't want it too long. You want to make sure the room's dimly lit when you get them ready for bed. And then when you say goodnight, you want to leave the room, and the room you want to put them down firstly awake so that they get themselves to sleep, that independent sleep thing. And you want to make sure the room is pitch black. So the reason that you want the room pitch black, you might know that you should have a room dark, but why is it that the room should be pitch black? So the reason is because of the sleepy hormone melatonin. So the sleepy hormone melatonin, this rises when the room's dark. So you want to give your baby the best chance of a good night's sleep. So you want that melatonin level to rise. So if you've got blackout blinds, great. I had blackout blinds, but I find that lights came through the side. So I ended up going on Amazon and getting these Velcro ones that goes Velcro all around the edges, and then there's like thick bit of fabric that attaches. They're great. It completely gets rid of all the light in the room. So you just want to try and keep that whole nighttime routine calm, short, 20-25 minutes, and then you put your baby down awake in their cot. You turn the light off, pitch black, you say goodnight, and let them go to sleep themselves. So the next thing that we want to talk about is you want to make sure that your baby is getting the right amount of sleep in the day as well. So just to recap, we've got independent sleep, we've got the use of sleep props, eliminating them. We want to make sure our nighttime routine's spot on, and then we want to make sure our day routine is right. So what we want to do is we want to get our baby down at the right time during the day, because if you miss that window, they'll be overtired. And at each age, they've got an appropriate wake window time. So for example, a 6-month-old can stay up for 2.5 hours, but an 11-month-old can stay up 4 to 5 hours. So finding that sweet spot where your baby is able to fall asleep without being overtired is so key. So the reason why overtiredness can cause bad sleep is due to that cortisol hormone that rises in the body when they're really overtired. So it's the stress hormone, cortisol. And so if your baby, so think of you guys, if you go to sleep, you go to bed and you're really exhausted, and you go into bed and you can't actually fall asleep, it's really frustrating. It's usually due to that cortisol, that stress hormone in the body. It's their sleep safety system to ensure their survival. That's why we've got it in us. So you want to reduce the chance of this. So you need to make sure that your whole routine in the day is divided by wake window times. So once you make sure that your day routine is correct, you also want to make sure that they're getting the right amount of sleep in the day as well. It's just so much to learn. So you want to make sure that they're getting the right amount of sleep in the day, so then that they get the right amount of sleep at night. So it's a real balancing act. So at each age, a child needs a certain amount of sleep in the day, and at night as a total. So for example, let's say your 7-month-old, they can sleep 14 hours in the day. We're going to do a little maths lesson here. So they have 14 hours total in day and night sleep. So if you allow them to have 4 hours sleep in the day, that means they're only going to have 10 hours sleep left. So if you put them down, for instance, at 7, 10 hours later is 5 o'clock in the morning. They're going to wake up, they've had enough sleep. So they'll be ready for the day at 5 o'clock. So what you're going to need to do here is shift and redistribute that sleep. So reduce the amount of day sleep, so then that extra hour gets added on at night. Does that make sense? So it's a real balancing act, because you don't then want to make them too tired, but you need to abide by the right amount of sleep in the day for your child and the right amount of wake windows, so that they all get the right amount of sleep at night. And if you want me to send you how much sleep your child as a guideline should be getting in the day and at night and as a total, then just drop me a message and I'll be able to help you with that. Another topic that gets asked is if your baby's frequently night waking. So when your baby's waking frequently at night, there's a couple of things you need to look at. So firstly, is she overtired? So is she getting the right amount of sleep in the day? And is she going to bed at a reasonable hour with the right amount of wake window between her last nap and bed? Does she know how to fall asleep independently? So this is usually the reason for multiple wakings, like we touched on earlier. If she doesn't know how to fall asleep independently, she's going to wake up through the night. What you need to do in a situation if your child is waking up frequently, you need to use whatever sleep training technique you're using, and to learn and teach them to self-settle and go back to sleep. Night weaning as well. So people say, oh, what age can my child be night weaned? So generally, most healthy 6 to 8 month old babies are usually ready to drop their night feeds. But I always advise my clients asking their pediatrician or their GP to check their healthy weight and whether they are happy for them to start weaning. So when you decide that you might possibly night wean, it's always important to look at, is your child waking due to hunger or is it due to comfort? If it's due to hunger, then you shouldn't necessarily be stopping that feed. You're just starving them that feed. But if it's due to comfort, then you might want to look at getting rid of that feed. There's some key differences that I'm going to take you through to establish whether it's hunger or whether it's comfort. So signs of hunger, they include that your child falls back to sleep after feeding completely on their own, after being laid down wide awake. But if it's comfort, your baby continues to cry after a feeding, and they require much more comforting to fall back asleep. If it's also hunger, they'll take a large amount of food, they remain awake during that, and then they fall asleep and get straight back to sleep. If it's comfort, they'll take a little bit, and then they'll fall back to sleep. And then when you put them back in the cot, they cry again, and then they want some more. So there's a real difference there between a baby guzzling down a large bottle of milk, being put down in a cot, awake, and they go back to sleep, versus one that's just taking lots of little amounts. Also with hunger, it's usually after a longer sleep stretch. If it's comfort, they usually wake up frequently through the night. And with hunger, it's usually like they take about one feeding, but with comfort, it's usually frequently they need lots of feedings, because realistically, your baby is not going to need feeding every 1 to 2 hours, and once they're like 6 months old. That you could kind of say it's probably comfort. But we'll say check with your doctor, and you know your baby best. You probably know if it's comfort or if it's hunger. So if you think they're ready to be night weaned, I always advise that you up the calories in the day to try and compensate the feeding being reduced at night. So you also want to make sure your child's not overtired, because at the end of the day, you're changing their normal routine. So they're going to accept a lot more if they're not overtired. And just be consistent. So in terms of how to do it, the most popular approach to end night feedings is reducing the amount of milk they receive every few nights, so that they eventually just don't bother waiting for it anymore. So for breastfed babies, you gradually reduce the amount of milk you give them on the breast, 1 minute every 1 to 2 days. So for example, if your baby nurses 10 minutes on each side, for a total of 20 minutes, you want to start popping them off at 9 minutes, and then 8 minutes and then 7 minutes for every 1 to 2 days. So by the time you're only nursing 2 to 3 minutes, he's probably going to stop waking up all on his own. But if he still does wake up, you've got a couple of options. Send your partner in, because you're a bit of a tease at the end of the day. You get the message from your partner that no more food for them, and your partner can just go in and do a minute's low-key soothing. Then the second option that you can do is just let them complain. I don't mean a big cry out scene. I just mean 5 to 10 minutes of just letting them whinge, because you've already decreased their milk consumption. So they're now not used to eating. They just have to get used to the fact that they just need to go back to sleep. And they'll typically complain for 5 to 10 minutes, and they'll just go straight back to sleep. With bottle-fed babies, it's the same concept. All you're going to be doing is just offering 2 ounces less formula every couple of nights. So instead of, for instance, an 8-ounce bottle, you'll go down to 6 ounces, 4 ounces. Or the other option is to dilute the formula, so until you get to water. So let's say you start with 8 scoops usually, you're going to go to 7 scoops, 6, you're just going to go 8 scoops, 6 scoops, 4 scoops, until you get to water. And then after you've fed your baby water for 2 nights, you just stop feeding them anymore. So, and at that point, they're probably not going to wake, especially if it's for water, and their bodies are now used to not waking up at that time. But if they do, then you can do those 2 options I just gave you for bottle and for breastfed. So you send in your partner for some low-key soothing, or you just let them complain for 5 to 10 minutes, and they should probably go back to sleep. Another method that I think we should consider is the delay and keep awake approach for night weaning. So the concept here is, if you delay gratification and make them work for it, they'll end up thinking it's not worth it, the effort, and it'll be enough to stop those unnecessary wakings. So even if a parent has to resort to feeding them in the end, it's enough that hard work and effort is enough to stop those wakings if it's just comfort. So what you would need to do, so let's say your baby wakes up, you need to follow the sleep training technique that you're using. But after 15 minutes, if they're 3 to 4 month old, feed them, but make sure that you feed them when they're awake. But if it's a 5 month plus old, you need to wait 20 to 25 minutes before feeding them. So you're just ensuring that they are fully awake when you feed them, and you're fully awake when you put them back down, and then you just continue on that sleep training approach that you're using, that sleep method, until they go back to sleep. So that's sometimes enough to stop them waking for that feed. So you've got a few options there, and happy to discuss in more detail if you've got any more questions about each one. Now, so let's just recap. You've got your baby in a good nighttime routine. You can sleep independently. You've got to wean them off the bottles. You're onto a good thing here. But suddenly they start waking up early. They wake up at 5 o'clock. So there's certain things you can do for early rising, but firstly, let's establish what actually is early rising. So early rising is anything before, it's generally defined as anything before 6 a.m. So normal baby wake up time is between 6 and 7. It's just the way they're built. It's their biologically based circadian rhythms that are just different to us adults. They're set earlier. So unfortunately, they're going to wake up earlier than us adults, but they'll go to bed. They'll need a earlier bedtime. It's just the way they're built until they become teenagers, and then they want to sleep in all morning. So what can you do about early rising? There's a few things you can do, but first of all, you need to establish what type of early riser you've got in your hands. So there's two, and when I describe each one, you're going to know exactly what one your little one falls into, which category. So you've got that tired, cranky early riser, or you've got that cheerful early riser. So first of all, the tired, cranky early riser, they're the ones that sleep less than 10 hours at night, and they have poor naps, they're not meeting their daily sleep requirements, and they could benefit from more sleep. So usually the reasons for the waking could be a number of things. So it could be hunger, it could be brightness in the room, it could be discomfort, it could be overtiredness, it could actually just be habitual waking. So there's certain things that you can do for a tired, cranky early riser. So first of all, you need to treat an early wake up the exact same way as you would a middle of the night waking. So whatever sleep technique you're using, you apply that for that early morning wake up until you reach the 6:30 or whatever time you feel is an okay time to wake up. So because it's important that your baby learns it's not time to get up yet, and they'll eventually just learn to go back to sleep. So you're resetting their clock. So the problem is, as sleep is the lightest during this time, it's especially hard for a baby to go back to sleep at this time. So often I find that parents start nursing their baby back to sleep, or they'll bring them into their own bed, or they'll actually just get them up for the day. Even just by getting them up for the day, it's enough to set their internal clock to wake up at the same hour each morning. So that's even if they've not had enough sleep, they're still going to wake up at that time. So it's so important to keep them in their bed until you want them to get up. So that, whether that's 6:30 or 7. Also, parents often think that if you put your baby down later, they're going to wake up later. So, I'm going to put my baby down at 9 o'clock because that means then they'll get up later. Maybe they'll get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, it doesn't work like that, because as we spoke about overtiredness, you're probably going to have a worse night's sleep with them, and they're probably going to wake up just as early or even earlier. So you just always need to make sure that they're on that age-appropriate schedule with the right amount of sleep and wake times. And often early rising is due to overtiredness. So you really don't put them down later. It doesn't work. Also, when your baby does wake up early, don't make their bedtime to their first nap too close to their waking. So let's say they woke up at 5 and you then start putting them down at 7, because if you put them down too soon, it's just going to act like an extension to their night sleep. So all you're going to do is prolong the issue. A method that you can use is the wake to sleep approach. So this will work if your baby's waking at the same time every day. It's going to take a bit of commitment from you, but it can work really effectively. So what you're going to do here is what you're trying to do is interrupt their cycle so they then go back into a deeper sleep. So set your alarm. So let's say your baby wakes up at 5:30 every single morning. What you're going to need to do is set your alarm for 5 o'clock, so half an hour before their wake up. And you're just going to go over to their nursery and you're just going to gently rouse them. So for some babies, that means just walking past their room. For some, that means actually going in and touching them. But you just want to send them into a semi-conscious state, but not actually wake up. But then once you've done that, you just need to leave the room immediately. And that just resets them, so they hopefully then go back into deeper sleep, and that should solve their early rising. This doesn't work if it's due to external environmental things, so like light coming in at 5:30 in the morning, or a certain noise at that time. You just need to make sure it's not due to external environmental reasons. You've got to be persistent with this. It could work after a couple of days, but actually could take up to 10 days to work. So you've just got to be consistent. Keep setting that alarm for half an hour before, and see if you can make their wake up a bit later. If your baby's a cheerful early riser, so those are the ones that wake up happy at 5:30, whatever time they're waking up, and they're refreshed, they've had enough sleep in the night, they've had 10 hours of overnight sleep at least, they're having enough naps in the day, but it's just they're waking too early for your liking. There's a couple of things you need to do. You need to double check that no light's coming in, first of all, and then just check that they're not getting too much sleep during the day, because as we spoke about, you might need to limit their naps. So this is what we discussed about redistributing their sleep and the amount of sleep, the total amount of sleep, because you might need to find that you might need to reduce the nap time so that it gets added on to the night sleep. So it's a real fine balance, because you don't want to make them overtired as well. So
as soon as they know that you're going to get up shores, and you should then, say for example, like it'd be different when she's in a nursery, but say for example,
sorry, is someone asking me a question? No? Oh, okay. Okay, we'll continue on. So that's one thing. You can redistribute their sleep. The other thing you can try and do is you can try and shift that entire schedule. So you can try moving their bedtime slightly later to see if you can shift their early waking time. So how you do this is when you need to change their naps and their bedtime to 15-minute increments. You need to alter the whole schedule by 15-minute increments. So let's say their first nap's at 9, change that to 9:15, the next nap's at 1, change that to 1:15, and their bedtime, make that 15 minutes later as well. And you need to keep on doing this until you reach their new bedtime. And so it can take, bear in mind, this can take 1 to 2 weeks for your baby to adjust. So just give it a chance. But don't give them a ridiculously late bedtime. Give it an age-appropriate bedtime, something between 7 and 8:30, and just see if that can help. Other things that, so you've got your baby, you sometimes think you've got your baby into a really good routine, and then suddenly a nap transition can occur. So there's so many of them. So between 4 and 5 months, they go from 4 to 3 naps. 6 to 9 months, they go from 3 to 2. 10 to 18 months, they go from 2 to 1. There's just so many different things that keep happening with a baby, just as you think you've got them into a good routine. So signs of transitions. So naps often get shorter, usually only last about 20 to 25 minutes instead of their normal hour or an hour and a half. They're able to stay awake longer between naps as well, and then they sometimes just completely protest and just refuse to go to sleep. That's usually a sign they're ready to make a change and to adjust how many naps they have in the day. Another sign is that they're waking up early in the morning. This is a sign that parents are continuing to offer a nap that should actually be dropped already. So if you decide that your child needs to transition to one less nap, you need to transition the baby to the proper nap schedule by eliminating that nap and then just increasing the awake period gradually, and then just adjust that bedtime if needed, because when they're going through a nap transition, it's really difficult for a baby. They're used to having so many more sleeps in the day. Suddenly they're getting less. and their bodies are needing to adjust. So just give them an early bedtime. There's nothing wrong with an early bedtime if they're going through a change. So the one that I want to talk about to you more is the 2-to-1 nap transition, because I think that's one's a little bit more tricky. So it's good to have some tips on how to handle that one. First of all, don't rush transitioning your baby to a 1 nap from 2 naps. Do it when they are ready. So I always ask that's why I always ask my clients to monitor their sleep for 2 weeks. And over that 2-week period, if they're going from, if they're sleeping 5, if they're resisting 5 out of those 7 naps in each week, then it's probably a sign that they're ready. But the reason I say to just monitor over 2 weeks is during this time, there's so many developmental milestones going on that can affect their sleep. It actually might not be that they're ready to transition from 2-to-1 naps. It might actually just be a developmental thing that's going on in their little brains that's disrupting their sleeps. But I mean, the signs that they are ready is generally that just watch out for that they're happily taking their morning nap, but then that afternoon nap is a struggle from 5 out of the 7 days for 2 weeks. And if you decide that it's time to transition them from 2-to-1 naps, just go for it. Because if you start jumping between 2 and 1, all you're going to do is you're just confusing their body clock, and you're wanting to get their body clock in line. It'll be a lot quicker process, and if you stay consistent. So how do you make the switch? So do it. What you're trying to do is you're aiming to get their morning nap moved to 12:30. So what you do is you just move that morning nap 30 minutes every three days until you reach that 12:30 nap time. When is normally their nap time, offer them a snack just to keep them going. And then in the afternoon, bridge that gap between their nap time and bed with a 20-minute cat nap. So this can be in the cot, this can be in the pram, in the car, whatever, just to see them through, because at the beginning they're going to be super tired and they won't have the stamina to get through till nighttime, and all they're going to be is overtired. So also just bring that bedtime earlier, just for the short term, and over the 4 weeks you can start just moving it back to a normal bedtime, whether it's 7:30. So this transition can take up to 4 to 6 weeks for you to see some good naps at 12:30. So they might just take 45 minutes to an hour. It's just they need to get their body learning to have consolidate what used to be 2 naps into 1. So don't worry if they're only taking 1 hour, but that's why you're going to give them a cat nap in the afternoon, and they're going to give them a early bedtime. But eventually you're aiming between 2 and 3 hours in the afternoon once you've successfully transitioned to 1 nap. Wow, so we are nearly out of time. So there's so many other topics I want to cover with you guys, but I want to get to some of your questions. So some of you guys sent in some questions. So let me read them to you. So I've got, hi, my 6-month-old is exclusively breastfed and bedtime is often a challenge. I always take her upstairs at 7 p.m. when looking tired, put her in a sleeping bag, white noise on and lights off. Then I feed, rock, do both to sleep, and she'll fight me until she's finally asleep around 8 p.m, often with crying and screaming. How can I change this? I've tried earlier and later, but still get the same results. So I need a little bit more information about your girl, so feel free to get in touch after. So things like how much sleep is she getting in the day? So at 6 months, you need to aim for about 3.5 hours maximum, with 2.5-hour wake windows. So when you're putting her down at 7, which is a good bedtime, as long as her last nap of the day ended at 4:30, she should be fine in terms of her tiredness. And at 6 months, she should be on the 2 to 3 month schedule. You talk about feeding and rocking. So does she know how to self-settle and sleep independently? So I want to look at that and first of all make sure that she can sleep independently, because you're rocking her, you're acting as a sleep prop. Because you want to put her down in her cot awake and then let her fall asleep herself. Also I'd advise that you bring her feeding to the beginning of the bedtime routine as well. So just to disassociate the feeding with sleep. If you want some more information on this, just get in touch after and we can have a little chat about what's going on in more detail. So next question is, no matter what time my 2-month-old goes to bed, he wakes up between 4:30 and 5:30, early rising. So are you still giving him a nap in the day is the first question I'd ask. If so, it might be time to look at dropping any day naps and just give him a really early bedtime at first. Also, I'd also invest in a couple of things to make him want to stay in bed. So the reason I say this is, so a child can typically, they start understanding at 2.5 about rewards. So you could get them a reward chart. I can send you some. I've got some really good ones. So if you want to get in touch after, I can just send you some examples of reward charts that he can or she can pick out. What you want to do here is you want to make it a really big deal about them staying in bed. You want to make it really positive experience. So about this whole new rule of you need to stay in bed and you'll get a reward. So we'll do something on your reward chart. The other thing that you could try and do is invest in a toddler clock. So you've got those grow clocks, or you've got the traffic light ones. The idea of these is they help kids stay in bed because they make it a fun thing by providing like those visual cues. So red means stay in bed, for instance, and green means it's time to wake up. So they'll lay in bed getting all excited that it's going to turn green in the morning. So this really helps with early wake up. So try those couple of things and get in touch if there's any other issues or if it doesn't solve it. Next question is advice on getting a very mobile baby down for nap. He's tired but will stand for ages. So I need a little bit more detail, such as what age is your baby? So often when they're going through developmental leaps, they often like practicing their newfound skills. So in this case, they like standing up in the cot. So you want to get your baby to sit down themselves. So go in and just put them down with very minimal eye contact. Don't interact with them because you need to be careful that it doesn't become a stand up, put down game. So they'll just keep on doing it. So after a few times, don't keep sitting them down. Just so you could either, I don't know what age they are, but you could either just pat the mattress so that they learn to just get themselves down, because the key is that you want them to get themselves down. I'd also just double check, because you're not telling me their routine and their age, but I'd check that you're not leaving it too late and they're actually overtired, so they're struggling to get to sleep. So just make sure that they're having the right wake time for their age and their age appropriate schedule. So when is it a good time to stop night feeds? So we discussed this. So really, I would say this needs to be led by you and your GP or pediatrician. But generally, by 6 to 8 months, healthy weight baby can drop their night feed. But it's really important to know, as we said, if it's waking because they're hungry or if it's actually comfort, because then you can actually do something about it. As we discussed, you could use the delay gratification method, or just reduce the amount of feeding that you give them to the quantity. Either way works. Just if you want any more help with that, obviously just ask me. But just make sure that if you are going to drop that feed, just make sure that they're getting enough food in the day to make up for it. Another question is, when should you stop using white noise to aid sleep? So white noise, it should be used to drown out background noise, and it should avoid unnecessary wake up when there's a lot of noise around. It shouldn't be used as a sleep prop. So your child should be able to sleep independently. It's just blocking out any external noise. That's how it should be used. So I would say personally, after a year, if you're still using it, it might be time to drop it, just because, for example, if you're planning on sending them to nursery, unlikely you might have issues with using white noise at nap time. Nurseries might not be able to use it. But as long as your child can sleep independently and it's just used to block out noise, there's not a huge issue with using it. But if you do decide to get rid of it, the approach to use is just turn down the volume every couple of days until you reach 0 and it's not on anymore. It shouldn't be a big issue. Hope that's time up. So I hope it's been useful this evening. I wish we had longer. I hope you now have a better understanding of your baby's sleep. But if you have any other questions, then obviously just get in touch, and I can answer anything that you want me to answer. Obviously just drop me an email, carla@snoozetots.com, or just message me on Instagram, and I will be happy to help, and we can do some one-to-one consultations. Whatever you need help with, I am here for you. Hope you have a good evening, and I will speak to you all soon. Bye.